It was a quiet May morning in 2025 when President Ibrahim Traoré heard the phone ring in his office at the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. He was sipping his tea, halfway through reading a report on agricultural reform, when his chief of staff handed him the line, "Mr. President, it's a producer from Fox News. They're insisting it's urgent." Ibrahim raised an eyebrow and pressed the speaker button. A shaky American voice came through. "President Traoré. Good morning. I'll get straight to it. Kash Patel wants to challenge you to a live debate tonight on Tucker Carlson's show." There was a pause. The kind of pause that isn't silence, it's calculation. "Debate me," Ibrahim said calmly. "On what topic?" The producer hesitated. He claims he can prove that Africa doesn't need American support, and he wants to do it live. Ibrahim slowly leaned back in his chair. Kash Patel, former government advisor, now a high-profile media figure known for his sharp tongue and bolder ego, was a name he knew well. Always loud, always certain, always underestimated the people he spoke over. Ibrahim smiled. But it wasn't the smile of surprise. It was the kind of smile you give when the trap has already been set. "I accept," he said. "But on one condition. I want 15 minutes to present our national findings before the debate begins." "Sir, that's not our usual format," the producer said nervously. "Then there's no debate." A long silence. "Then all right. We'll make it happen." The line went dead. Ibrahim turned to his top aide, Moussa Kaboré, who had been listening from the corner of the room. "Get the team ready. I want every economic and infrastructure indicator from the past 3 years on my desk in 2 hours." Moussa blinked. "Sir, what exactly are you planning?" Ibrahim looked out the window. Toward the people in the street vendors. Children. Soldiers. His country. His responsibility. A lesson in reality. He said, 1. The world won't forget. By noon, the palace war room was buzzing. Ministers. Advisors. Data analysts, everyone was moving with precision. Screen lit up. Charts loaded. Microphones were tested. Every number was triple-checked. GDP up 8.5% year over year. Unemployment cut by 2/3. Over 4 billion in foreign investment. Reported Fatimata, the economic minister. Ibrahim listened. Silent and focused. This wasn't about ego. It wasn't even about him. It was about rewriting a narrative, not with anger, but with truth. And truth, when spoken clearly enough, doesn't shout. It echoes. At 6:00 p.m., Ibrahim walked into the camera room, dressed in a crisp navy suit. The lights were bright. The world would soon be watching. And somewhere in a studio across the Atlantic, Kash Patel was rehearsing his takedown. He had no idea he was walking into the fire. In Washington, D.C., Kash Patel was adjusting his tie in the green room at Fox News. His team buzzed around him, makeup, lighting, final talking points. He glanced over a flashcard. Burkina Faso GDP per capita under 1. Ling. Still ranked bottom 30 in development. He chuckled. This is going to be easy. Across the ocean, in the heart of Ouagadougou, a storm was gathering, not of weather, but of will. Inside the presidential palace, the briefing room had been transformed into a tactical command center. Laptops open. Printers whirring. Projectors glowing. Everyone knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a televised debate, it was an opportunity to change perception on a global stage. Ibrahim stood at the head of the table, hands folded behind his back. Calm. Composed. A general in a suit. "I want facts," he said. "Not slogans. Not sound bites. We'll fight opinion with evidence." Fatimata Sawadogo, the Minister of Economy, pulled up the numbers. Growth has averaged 8.5% for 3 consecutive years. Unemployment fell from 32 to 11%. We've secured over $4.2 billion in foreign investment, primarily from Europe and China. Ibrahim nodded. Education. We've built 847 new schools. Literacy rates are rising, especially among girls. Healthcare. 23 new hospitals. Infant mortality, down 19%. Musa, his aide, leaned forward. "Do you think Kash Patel will come prepared?" Ibrahim smiled faintly. "He'll come loud, not prepared." Meanwhile, in D.S.E. Bree, Kash Patel was reviewing his opening lines with a producer. "This guy's got no real experience. Took power young. Looks polished. Sure, but watch. I'll make him stumble. Americans love a good takedown." Back in Africa, the atmosphere was anything but nervous. Focused, energized. Technical crews were finalizing the satellite link, syncing audio feeds, ensuring the backdrop was presidential but humble books. A framed photo of the national flag. A single white flower on the desk. The president rehearsed not a script, but numbers. "This isn't about defending myself," he told Musa quietly. "It's about defending the dignity of people who've built progress with their bare hands and who never get credit for it." As the sun dipped over Ouagadougou, Ibrahim stepped away for a moment of silence. No phones. No cameras. Just him. Then he returned. Eyes sharper than before. By 6:45 p.m., the connection was tested. Signal clean. Audio crisp. From the Fox News control room. A technician radioed. "We have President Traoré's feed. Locked in. At exactly 7:00 p.m. Ouagadougou time and 8:00 p.m. In Washington, the countdown began. Going live in 5. So. 3. Across the world. Viewers leaned forward in their seats. Some came for drama. Some came to cheer. But none of them were ready for what was about to happen. Good evening. I'm Tucker Carlson. And tonight, something special. That was how it started. Across America. Millions were tuned in. Some out of curiosity. Others for spectacle. And a few, just a few, because they sensed this might be bigger than a debate. The camera panned to the Fox News studio. Kash Patel, dressed in a crisp navy suit, sat poised with the air of someone certain of victory. He adjusted his mic and gave a nod to the control room. "Let's do this." Then the screen split. Half showed Patel under bright studio lights. The other half showed a calm, composed figure thousands of miles away. President Ibrahim Traoré, seated in his office in Ouagadougou. Behind him, a modest shelf of books, a national flag, and a single white flower on the desk. He looked straight into the lens and offered a polite smile. "Good evening. Tucker. Thank you for the invitation." Tucker nodded. Gentlemen, we'll begin with opening remarks. Président Traoré, you requested time to speak before we begin. Yes. Ibrahim said, just 15 minutes to present a few facts. Kash leaned forward, smirking. 15 minutes. What? For Ibrahim didn't look at him. He spoke calmly, directly into the camera. For clarity, for truth. Then it began. Slide after slide flashed on screen, clean graphics. Clear data. Over the past 3 years, Burkina Faso has averaged 8.5% annual GDP growth. Unemployment has dropped from 32 to 11%. Ibrahim said, we've built 847 schools, 23 hospitals, and over 1,500 kilometers of paved roads. Patel tried to interrupt. Those numbers are questionable. Ibrahim raised a hand gently. I'll finish. Mr. Patel, he continued. We've attracted $4.2 billion in foreign investment. Our exports now reach 34 countries. For the first time in a generation, our trade balance is positive. The room at Fox News grew quiet. The control room was still. Even Tucker seemed surprised by the clarity of the presentation. Kash cleared his throat. Okay. That's your version. Now let's talk reality. He turned to the camera. Burkina Faso still ranks near the bottom in global development. Billions in international aid have flowed into Africa for decades. What has it changed? Ibrahim didn't flinch. Mr. Patel, he said, over the past 5 years, Burkina Faso has received only $340 million in loans. Not aid, and we're repaying every dollar. The notion that we survive on handouts is outdated and false. Kash's eyebrows twitched. Even so, you took power through questionable means. You're only 35. What experience do you really have? There it was. The jab. But Ibrahim smiled. Mr. Patel, how old were you when you became a senior aide in the U.S. government? Kash blinked. That's different. Is it you were 34? And you had never led a city, let alone a nation. At 35, I lead a country through crisis, recovery, and reform. The audience murmured even through the screen. You could feel it. A shift. This wasn't the takedown Patel had planned. This wasn't arrogance meeting reality. This was a young leader delivering something more dangerous than emotion facts. I'm not here to attack, Ibrahim said calmly. I'm here because for too long, people like you have defined us without ever knowing us. Kash opened his mouth, then closed it. Tucker turned to him. Mr. Patel, your response, but Kash didn't answer. He was too busy recalculating, too busy realizing that the man on the screen had come prepared, and America was watching. Tucker Carlson leaned forward in his chair. Even he could feel it. The temperature in the room had shifted. Président Traoré, he said, you seem remarkably prepared for this discussion. Ibrahim offered a quiet smile. Preparation is a form of respect. Tucker, for your audience and for the truth. Kash Patel shifted in his seat, loosening his collar. His plan was unraveling fast. He reached for the one card he was sure would land. You can spin numbers all you want, Mr. President, Kash said, voice sharpened. But at the end of the day, You took power through a military transition. That's not democracy. That's dictatorship. Tucker blinked. The comment hung heavy in the air. Ibrahim didn't flinch. He leaned forward. Calm, but commanding. Let me tell you a story. Mr. Patel, he said, when I took office, 70% of our country was controlled by armed insurgents. Markets were closed. Schools burned. Soldiers were dying. Civilians were fleeing. He paused. In the first 90 days, we regained control of over half that territory. Then, we held a national referendum. Not a decree. A vote. Supervised by the African Union and the United Nations. And 89% of our people said they wanted me to stay. Tucker tilted his head, clearly intrigued. You're saying your leadership was ratified by the people, not in words. Ibrahim replied. In ballots. Under pressure. In hope. Kash wasn't done. And yet, here you are, trying to act like some kind of reformer. What do you know about transparency? About accountability? Ibrahim exhaled softly. I'm glad you brought that up. The air in the studio went still. Like something was coming. Ibrahim reached to his side and lifted a plain folder into frame. Mr. Patel, he said, since you speak so passionately about waste and corruption, may I ask you something? Kash narrowed his eyes. What are you? Or are you not? A registered partner in 3 American firms that hold defense contracts related to Africa. Kash sat back. That's irrelevant. Is it? Ibrahim opened the folder. Patel Defense Consulting. Patel Strategic Solutions. Patel International Holdings. All registered in Delaware. All awarded contracts worth a combined $47 million. Tucker's eyes widened. Kash, he said. Almost off script. Is this accurate? Kash stammered. That has nothing to do with tonight. Ibrahim's voice remained steady. I believe it does. Because these contracts were for services that were never fulfilled. Our team traced the funds. Some were transferred to offshore accounts. Cayman Islands. Zurich. Luxembourg. Kash's face flushed. You have no proof. Ibrahim held up a document. Public records. Filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. And I believe your own government has been quietly investigating for 8 months. The control room at Fox News froze. Phones started ringing. Producers began whispering. Tucker looked stunned. Mr. Patel. Is this true? I need to consult my legal team. Kash muttered. Ibrahim didn't press. He simply closed the folder. I didn't come here to accuse anyone, he said. But if we're going to talk about accountability, let's make sure the conversation includes everyone. There was silence. A heavy, global kind of silence. Then Tucker leaned toward the camera. We'll be right back. But the damage was already done. The debate wasn't over. It had just become something else entirely. The moment the show cut to commercial, chaos broke loose behind the scenes. Producers scrambled. Phones rang nonstop. Legal teams rushed into the Fox News control room. Someone whispered, "We might need to pull the segment from reruns." But it was too late. Clips of the confrontation were already online. On Twitter. Hashtags like Patel exposed, number Traoré truth, and number Burkina clapback exploded. Within minutes, the video had over 4 million views. By the time the segment returned from break, The entire internet was watching live. Kash Patel sat frozen. His usual fire had vanished. His hands clenched tight under the desk. Jaw locked. Eyes darting toward off-camera producers who couldn't save him now. Tucker tried to regain control. "Mr. Patel," he said, voice more measured now. "Would you like to respond to the allegations? I've done nothing wrong." Kash mumbled. "This is political theater." President Ibrahim Traoré leaned in gently. "This isn't theater, Mr. Patel. It's arithmetic. It's contracts, dates, wire transfers. It's public money meant to help real people." And it disappeared. The audience fell silent. Tucker cleared his throat. "Président Traoré, are you saying U.S. funds were misused?" "No." "Tucker, I'm saying they were redirected not by us, but by those who speak loudest about how we spend them." Then came the line that shook the room. "You see," Ibrahim said, "for years, we were told we were corrupt, lazy, incapable. But maybe the real corruption didn't happen in Africa. Maybe it happened in Washington boardrooms and offshore bank accounts." Kash stood up suddenly. "I won't be lectured by some dictator." Ibrahim remained seated. "And yet, here you are lectured. By data, by your own filings, by consequences." Tucker raised a hand. "Gentlemen, please." But the tension was electric. Kash slammed his mic down and stormed off set, the sound echoing through the studio like a slammed courtroom door. The cameras caught every second. The live feed cut to Ibrahim, still seated, unshaken. Tucker looked into the camera. "We'll continue after this." But nothing else that evening could compare. The fallout. By sunrise, the world had changed. News outlets around the globe replayed the segment. CNN called it the most unexpected political moment of the year. The BBC labeled it a masterclass in leadership under pressure. In African capitals, people took to the streets, not in protest, but in celebration. The phrase, "Traoré just rewrote the rules," was trending in Nairobi, Accra, Lagos, and Johannesburg. At Fox News headquarters, emergency meetings were called. Executives debated how to handle the PR storm. Meanwhile, journalists from major networks flooded the inbox of Ibrahim's press team. Back in Ouagadougou, Moussa Kabore entered the president's office with a stunned look. "Sir," he said, holding a tablet, "you've received 73 media interview requests in the past hour. CNN, BBC, the New York Times, even 60 Minutes. Ibrahim looked up from a cup of tea. "Let's breathe first. Then we speak." At the White House, senior officials watched the full replay. Rumors swirled that an investigation into defense contracting had already begun quietly months ago, and now the floodgates were open. Ibrahim Traoré hadn't just won a debate. He'd cracked something open, and the world had just seen it happen in real time. The next morning, the front pages of America were on fire. President Traoré exposes U.S. contractor on live television, screamed the New York Times. Kash Patel walks off. Set after stunning allegations, blared the Washington Post. On cable news, every network ran loops of the now infamous exchange. And online, it had become a digital earthquake. By noon, The Fox News broadcast had over 32 million views across platforms. Commentators called it everything from a geopolitical reckoning to the most calculated takedown in modern television history. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about a debate anymore. It was about who held the truth and who had something to hide. The White House reaction. Inside the West Wing, the mood was tense. Aides were glued to screens, watching replays on loop. The president sat silently, jaw tight, arms crossed. "I want a full review," he finally said. "Every defense contract tied to Patel, every shell company. I want names." His chief of staff nodded grimly. "Sir, this could go wide." Patel wasn't the only one. "Then let it go wide," the president said. "If it means cleaning house, so be it." Across the Potomac, the Department of Justice launched a formal review of Patel's companies. Federal agents were already pulling records. Whispers inside Capitol Hill grew louder. Subpoenas were being prepared. Senators, both Republican and Democrat, called for hearings. For the first time in years, a corruption scandal was unfolding that neither party could bury. Meanwhile, in Ouagadougou, Musa rushed into the presidential office, his tablet glowing with news alerts. "Mr. President," he said breathlessly, "you need to see this." Ibrahim looked up from a simple breakfast. Toast, papaya, tea. 73 million views. Musa said, "Harvard just sent a formal invite. They want you to speak about government transparency." Oxford, too. Ibrahim raised an eyebrow. "Also, the UN General Assembly has requested your presence next month. Full address." Ibrahim leaned back in his chair. Calm, thoughtful. "This isn't about me." Musa smiled. "No. Sia. But you gave a continent a voice. Across Africa. Something had shifted. Editorials poured in, calling the moment a turning point. Talk radio buzzed in Ghana, Senegal, Kenya, in youth centers from Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Students replayed clips of Ibrahim's calm dismantling of assumptions. He had done more than defend Burkina Faso. He had redefined what African leadership could look like on the world stage. The collapse of Kash Patel. In Washington, things were unraveling fast for Kash. By Wednesday morning, federal agents arrived at his Virginia estate with warrants. Files were seized. Devices confiscated. A key arrest followed hours later. No cameras. No handcuffs on television. But the headlines didn't need images. They already had the footage that mattered. Patel's lovers scrambled. His allies distanced themselves. Lobbyists went silent. By Friday, 3 of his companies had their accounts frozen, and the Department of Defense confirmed what many had suspected: misappropriated funds, fraudulent invoices, phantom equipment that never existed. He had gambled on a debate. He had walked into a reckoning. The rise of something bigger. That weekend, Ibrahim held a quiet press conference. No flags. No ceremony. Just him and a microphone. "This is not about victory," he said. "It's about responsibility. I didn't humiliate anyone. I revealed a pattern. One we must all commit to changing." He paused. "Corruption is not African. It's not American. It is human. But so is integrity." The world listened. Because for the first time in a long time, someone wasn't pointing fingers. He was holding up a mirror. 3 months later, New York City pulsed with its usual noise: honking taxis, flashing billboards, tourists pouring through Times Square. But inside the United Nations General Assembly Hall, the air was still. Every seat was filled. Every camera pointed toward the same podium. President Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the world stage. He wasn't wearing a grand robe or a chest of medals. Just a dark suit, a small lapel pin of Burkina Faso's flag, and a calm that seemed to still the room. When he spoke, his voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "the scandal you've seen unfold these past months did not start with a debate, and it will not end with a trial." He scanned the room. It started with a belief that some voices matter more than others, that some nations are always the ones giving the lessons, while others are only allowed to listen. But that era has ended. The hall erupted into applause. Ibrahim continued, "We do not seek revenge. We seek renewal. We do not want to embarrass other nations. We want honest partnerships. Dignity is not a favor. It is a right." And with that, the applause rose again, longer, louder. In that moment, Ibrahim wasn't just the president of a small African country. He was the face of something new. The ripple effects, the Traoré effect, hit hard. Wall Street reevaluated billions in defense contracts. Independent auditing firms sprang into action. Multiple companies voluntarily disclosed inconsistencies in federal billing. At Harvard and Oxford, Ibrahim's UN speech became required reading in ethics and government courses. Ivy League lecture halls filled to hear how a soft-spoken leader used facts, not fury, to bring down a wall of deceit. Even Hollywood came calling. A major studio greenlit the debate. A $150 million feature film chronicling the live confrontation that reshaped global perceptions. Rumors swirled that Spike Lee was in talks to direct, but while the world chased the headlines, Ibrahim returned home to something quieter. Back in Burkina Faso, in Ouagadougou, the palace gates no longer needed guards in suits. Children played nearby. Locals brought flowers to the steps, not for ceremony, but for gratitude. One evening, under a soft amber sunset, Ibrahim walked the garden path with his daughter. "Daddy," she asked. "Are you famous now?" He smiled. "No. Sweetie, I just told the truth at the right time." She tilted her head. "Did it scare you?" He thought for a moment. "Yes, but I did it anyway." She held his hand tighter. The final lesson months later. At a global leadership summit in Geneva, a moderator asked Ibrahim a final question. "What made you go through with it that night on live television?" Ibrahim paused, then answered, "Because silence serves no one. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is speak softly while holding the truth." The room stood, not out of politics, not out of obligation, but out of respect, because in a world drowning in noise, one man had made the world listen without raising his voice. And that is how revolutions begin, not with a shout, but with a whisper that echoes forever.